Welcome to Conversations with Healers, a podcast and video interview series that features intimate, soulful, and cozy conversations with self-healers and healers. Healer to healer, we dive into all aspects of self-healing and healing, and being and becoming a healer. I am Damla. I am a healer and the host of this podcast, and I can't wait for you to listen to this conversation. If you are new to this podcast, please take a moment to subscribe so that you can be aware of new episodes. I also invite you to visit adropofom.com, adropofom.com, where I share a lot of free resources for self-healing and healing, and you can take a free quiz to find out what your energetic wounds are and how they may show up in your life. Discovering what your wounds are is the first step in healing them. I hope you enjoy this episode. There is one more thing I would like to share with you before you listen to this episode. I created a wonderful container to help you heal your energetic wounds and activate the infinite light and potential of your inner children. It is a crystal energy healing membership called Chakra Bliss Vault. Every month you will receive 3 new crystal healing sessions. Plus, you'll immediately have access to my entire energy healing recording library when you sign up. The membership is really affordable and will continue to be so. You can find out more about it at adropofom.com, adropofom.com. I invite you to make healing your energetic wounds and connecting with your inner children a priority and invest in your well-being by becoming a Chakra Bliss Vault member. Hello everyone, this is Damla with A Drop of Om, and I have today with me a wonderful healer, Amanda Kate. Amanda, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. I've been so excited to come and chat with you. So, yeah, it's been a long time coming and I'm so excited for today.
Yeah, same here. We have so much juicy stuff to go into. But I want to tell the listeners that you are a self-mastery facilitator. And we will go into what exactly that means. And are an archetypal life coach, kinesiologist, author of the Divine, Messy, and Human book, which is such a beautiful title. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, there's more qualifications we could put there, but I run out of space these days. So.
Yes, that happens. So let's start by hearing your version of your story. What led you to these things and to doing what you do right now? What's the story that got you here?
Yeah, look, I guess you get to this point in your journey and you've been through your story so many times. So I'll give you a highly abridged version. It's basically, I don't think anyone finds the healing arts or coaching without going through their fair share of struggles, trauma, challenges, whatever you want to call it. And I certainly, have pretty much the full gamut of, t-shirts in my closet, different sizes, different colors. So I've had a broad life experience of the tougher aspects of life. And I just got to a point where my physical health was in such a bad way. I was desperate. I was desperate to feel better, to be better. I knew that life had more to offer. And this was that really deep knowing. So a lot of people say, oh, you were so brave to go on your journey. At the time, it wasn't bravery. Although now I do determine it that aligned bravery. People say in the energy work, move towards what feels light and expansive and, joyful, and move away from what feels cold and contractive. But me leaving my marriage, me ripping my my life apart to find a new way of being And literally, I left no stone unturned. That process began because I knew I could not keep down the same road. There was this massive feeling that I had to leave. That it wasn't a choice. It felt like life or death. And so it wasn't necessarily the brave decision to leave. It was this cellular, I have to do this or I will not be alive much longer. And it was that real cellular driver rather than moving towards what felt light and expansive and wonderful. And so I often tell people, sometimes those really massive decisions aren't as clear cut as that expansive versus contractive or joyful versus, sad, or, it's not necessarily that massive opposite. Sometimes it is just this cellular knowing that something's got to change and I've got to be open to seeing what's going to change and how it's going to change. So really that was, I guess, the big part for me was coming to that point of literally feeling like either I made a change or I wouldn't be here.
That's so interesting. I want to come back to aligned bravery, but one thing I'm going to say, so this is 2024 is my 6th year of podcasting, and I've interviewed with Conversations with Healers over 60 healers, and I've known many and met many. 2 people had what you just described, which is being pulled by the light, by expansiveness, rather than like falling on your head that you need to.
I fell.
I did too.
Many bruises. I used to joke that I would find rock bottom and then bounce along and find a whole new rock bottom and then think I'm climbing out but fall down another deeper hole. But at the same time there was that pull of this must change. You need to keep getting to these rock bottoms so you understand that yes, you can get out of it, that even in those rock bottoms, there were still moments of joy, moments of excitement, moments of happiness, even when I was in those really, really terrible places.
Yeah, and that's the journey of Inanna and Persephone, isn't it? Persephone being pulled into the depths and Inanna choosing to go into the depths and getting vulnerable. I think we start as Persephone's, and then after a few falls, you're like, okay, like I know what's coming. I'd rather get my like queen thing and I'll do the Inanna route where I choose to go down the 7 steps of the chakras and get things sorted before they explode. So tell me about aligned bravery. You mentioned that pull of being, there's the pull towards the light, but sometimes going there, to go there, you need to go through something tough and hard. So what do you mean by that aligned bravery?
So for me, like I said, I think it came from the fact that so many people said that I was brave for choosing to leave my marriage, but there was no other choice. It was like that was the choice on the table. There was that one thing. I had tried for years to make it okay, and it was never going to be okay because one person can't fix a toxic, broken marriage. It's just impossible. And so I knew I had no choice. I wanted my children to see better, to know better, to desire better for themselves. And I couldn't do that in that situation. And so there was this almost divine spark of, you need to get out. You have to do something else. It was almost like I knew that life could be better than what I was experiencing. I didn't know how. I had no idea about how I was going to financially support myself. My ex-husband said he was going to financially ruin me because he couldn't do it emotionally. I had all these threats over my head, and yet I still knew I needed to move forward. And that's what I mean by that aligned bravery. It is tapping into that part beneath the surface. It's tapping into that soul part of you that depth within you that goes, you have to get yourself out of this situation, and whether it be a job you feel stuck in, or whether it be a relationship you feel stuck in, or whether it is just the fact that that you've created this life because everyone else has told you this is the life to create. On paper, my life was what other people would want. A supposedly loving husband who was fine out of the house, but in the house was horrific to live with. And even actually towards the end, outside the house, there was that horrific nature. But we had the international holidays. We'd lived in, I met him in the UK, and then we moved back to Australia. So we'd lived in, a couple of different countries. I was able to be a stay-at-home mother when my children were little. And, I recognized later that was part of the control as well, so that I wouldn't ever have the financial means to leave. However, at the time, it was beautiful being able to spend that foundational time with my children. There was so many things that were really lucky. We had a beautiful home. We had beautiful children. And there was all of this positive stuff. And yet there was this pull, because I realized that was not, when it's so miserable, you've got to take a different step. And that's not the only step. For me, I left that marriage. I was bullied in a workplace. And so I woke up one day having been signed off for stress leave going, well, I guess I'm a full-time kinesiologist. I've just got no clients. And so I just went out and started working. And again, every time I've thought I've got to close down my business because it's just too hard. I mean, running your own business is, if anyone says it's easy, it's BS, or they've got free labor at home that they're able to tap into, or they've got free labor in some capacity that is supporting them, or they're paying people to support them. But when you're doing it on your own, it is really, really tough to be marketing and finance and customer service and, the doer of the, things. But there's always been this pull. This is what you're supposed to do. So just keep going. And so again, there's been all these options to tap out, but that aligned bravery is really a driving force from the soul. It's not the human part of us. It is that soul part of us that just goes, you've got this. You need to do this. And when we tap into that is when the magic happens. Because we're not just doing the surface. This feels warm. This feels cold. This feels this feels that. And using that as more of a shallow tap in.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned kinesiology.
Mm-hmm.
Was that something you were aware of during your marriage that entered your life, or was that afterwards? And then how did it play into you finding more opportunities for more aligned decisions? Was that something that you tapped into often?
Look, I found kinesiology when I it must be 8 months before I left my marriage, which is it's just over 8 years ago now. And it was, that first session just blew my mind. And within 4 months, I was at an introductory day, and within 6 months, I'd started studying. Then within 8 months, I left my marriage. And what it was doing was, it was this doorway into this life that I didn't know existed. It was the doorway into energy and vibration and spirit. It was my doorway back to spirituality. I'd locked out spirituality because I had it as religion growing up, which is so based in dogma and shame and guilt. And, the number of times I was humiliated as a way to keep me in line and to keep me as the good girl and to keep me as, somebody who was compliant to parents' needs. Those sorts of things I shied away from, of course, because they weren't nourishing and nurturing to my soul. What I found through kinesiology, and it wasn't a direct link. It was by doing this energy clearing on myself and by learning some of the things we did. It then led me to books where I'd learn more. It led me to different healers where I'd practice with different modalities. And, I became one of those people who would play around with different modalities. Even now, if I hear of a modality that I've not heard of before, it's like, sign me up. I'll go have a session and see what it's like. I used to joke that I was a kinesiology whore because I went out and I saw something like 8 or 10 different kinesiologists. Now, I had one or two main ones, but then I dabble with other ones to see how they worked, to see what else they brought up, to see what perspectives they had. Because energetic kinesiology is so varied. There's like 385 different types of it in the world, something crazy like that. And then within that, people's own life experience, the modalities that they tap onto it, all of that stuff makes the way that they practice so different. And what I was finding was it was like the doorway that opened for me to walk through and find a completely whole new world. And in that last, I started studying kinesiology at the end of 2015, actually almost exactly 8 years ago. I started my business almost exactly 7 years ago. And it's just been every doorway I've found and walked through, it has opened up whole new caverns of information and awarenesses, and then led me down different paths to understand myself better, to heal myself at deeper layers, to allow me to know human behavior better, to understand our innate wiring, our bodily physiology, how we are made to navigate this world, and then how all these external influences affect that, so that we ignore our innateness. We ignore that truth of who and what we are, because we're deferring to all of the things outside ourselves. And every time I've learned that, not only does it give me a deeper understanding of myself, but it brings more depth and texture to the work that I do with people. And even more importantly, it allows me to understand those people that I'm in relationship with. If my children or my partner are acting a certain way, or if his kids are acting a certain way, I can see all the patterning that's causing those reactions. Now, it's not my job to fix that, but it allows me to access the empathy and compassion I need for them, and to give them grace, to allow them their unresourceful behaviors, because it's actually not my job to fix them. And then to be able to go and regulate myself so that I'm not influencing them, because it's actually none of my business what they do.
Yes. Yeah,
because they're not my clients. It's different with clients.
That's true. That bit about consent and the willingness, I call it ready, willing, and able to do work. And then I'm also hearing from your story this, this need, this mess that you were in started you on the path of exploring healing and modalities. But it sounds to me like that opened a door for you to enter through, and then you sort of grabbed onto it with
I was like a kid in a candy store. I was the kid in the candy store, like, give it all to me. And I think the thing was, the more I've gone through it and the more I know, the more I realize I don't know, and the more I want to know. And so that's been that driving force. And that is something I really do actually need to temper within myself. It's something I've become really aware of, because I do know enough for where I'm at on my journey. And yes, I'm always going to be reading more books and learning more things and tapping into new modalities and understanding different things. In fact, I'm in the process at the moment of writing my own modality, bringing all of the amazing stuff I've learned together in a different way. Getting rid of, basically sorting the wheat from the chaff. What stuff has actually worked for me, and throw the rest away. Or not throw the rest away, because it's all informed it, but in terms of what I'm writing and pulling together. And, it is that constant exploring and unfolding, tempered with the acceptance and love for where I'm at right now and for how far I've come. So there is this idea now of, less kid in the candy store and more, look, you'll learn as it comes. Just, temper that excitement and that, in some ways it's a lack of focus because you're trying to eat all of the different, candies and learn about all of them at the same time, whereas now it's a lot more selective for me.
I like that a lot. I want to just open a little parenthesis
Mm,
just for our listeners who may not know or have heard of kinesiology. Can you give
mhm.
us your understanding of it? What is kinesiology and what does it exactly do?
Yep. So the way that we look at kinesiology is it is Eastern wisdom melded with Western science. And so it uses manual muscle testing. So if I do it online, I just muscle test on myself. It's just me tuning into your radio station and then reading the signals. But it's manual muscle testing to basically see where the stresses are in the body. It's reading that subconscious mind through the muscles. So your brain may go, no, that's not stressful, but your body is going, yeah, it is. And so it's being able to read that underlying stress in the body, putting an emotion to it, and then allowing the client to go, oh, okay, that was this. And so it can draw together seemingly separate instances, but recognize that the body has processed it and stored it in a similar kind of way, in a similar kind of state. And so it's unpacking the layers. It's making coherent the energy within the system. So instead of having big, blocks or voids or whatever, we've got everything working together in harmony. It's unlayering all the stresses that have been building over the years. People come in and they expect to be right in one session, and I'm like, it kind of doesn't work like this. You're carrying 45 years of stress here. Like, I'm good, but I'm not that good to get it all done in an hour. I had one lady who, she was younger, she was in her early 20s, and she had severe back pain, like could barely sit and study for a while. She had one session and was so much better. And mind you, she'd been seeing physios for over 2 years weekly. She'd been seeing, I can't even remember who else, but like weekly physio for over 2 years, one session with me, and she was able to sit for longer than she'd ever sat before. Now, I'm pretty happy with that. And she comes back in going, so when's it going to be right? I'm like, hang on, you've had 2 years of weekly physiotherapy and you've come in for one session for me. So I think sometimes it is tempering people's expectation because it does feel like magic. I've had sessions where I'm like, holy crap, shoulder pain, because there was an emotional resonance stuck in my shoulder. I was having all sorts of issues at the gym, and I'd been to physios, I'd had scans to see if there were bone spurs, like I'd done all these things. But what was actually being stored there? And when the problem started, the emotion was self-respect. And the moment my shoulder started playing up was when I knew I had to get out of my marriage. And so it had been painful for probably 2 years by the time we found it, maybe even longer. One session, finding that emotion, and I didn't have shoulder pain again until my grandfather died, which was about grief, because that's where we hold a lot of our grief. And so again, we start to understand the emotional resonance of what's being stuck in our body. We tie that together, and all of a sudden it's not creating that disharmony in our system anymore. So I absolutely love it as a modality. I think it is absolutely incredible, and it can make such big changes very quickly. And also there's still work to do as a human being when we're out of session to keep those changes happening.
Yeah, absolutely. You're pointing a very important part of what we do as healers, because in my case, I see it as I help people connect with their inner children
Mm.
and release the trauma so they can let their inner child shine. And through crystal healing and a lot of intuitive stuff around it. But basically, sometimes, even when you say that you're ready to release something, like that inner child needs that reassurance, inner child needs to feel ready to release that which they were hiding
Yeah.
behind, because
Yeah.
that kept them safe
Mm.
at the time that this was installed in your body. So that takes time, that takes
Mm.
patience, that takes
Yeah.
a lot of like loving coherence, bringing
Mm.
activities on your own, and then together partnering with a healer like you and me to
Mm.
say, okay, like you've been able to come up to this step, then now let's take you to next few steps
Yeah.
over, and then you can keep doing your inner work. So I absolutely agree with that. I want to talk about something that I know you're passionate about. Let's talk about the heroine's journey
Yeah.
versus the hero's journey. What they are,
Oh,
how they
yeah.
differ. That's very fascinating to me.
Oh, look, it has been life-changing for me. My last 2 years have not been about the hero's journey. I've done plenty of hero's journeys in my life. I will continue to do them because it is that journey. The I had somebody who I'd talked to about this, basically put out a podcast and she called it the heroine's journey, blah, 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 blah. But she was clearly talking about a hero's journey. It was just because she'd heard me mention those words. And I'm like, oh, it kind of didn't sit well. The fact is, they are very different journeys. It is not about the gender of the person who is navigating the journey. Men and women go through, and people of all genders, let me put that one in, go through heroes and heroines' journeys. The most popular one known is the hero's journey. That is the call to adventure. What is a call to adventure? It's a call outwards, isn't it? It's the call to change our outward life. It's a call to change, the way that we navigate the world. It is the external, the same way that the masculine is. It's the way we interact with others, our logic, our control, our trials, all of those things that are more external. The heroine's journey doesn't start with a call to adventure. It often starts, and there's two different versions of it. In one, it starts with our disconnection from our feminine, which we all do, because in this androcentric world, this world that is predominantly revolved around that top 0.5% of white males, because let's face it, most other white males also suffer under the system. That system that only benefits that top, like teeny tiny percentage of people, and everybody else suffers. That's the world that we've grown up in. Now, because we are not men, we want to disconnect from anything that is not men, because men is the pinnacle of success. It is the way that in the external world our success is perceived, and all the rest of it. And so what we often do, whether it be a disconnection from our actual mother or the feminine within ourselves, we see the way the feminine is in the world and we go, yeah, not that. Not that. That's not okay. We can't be creative and playful and fun, and we've got to be serious, and we've got to be the good girl, and children should be seen and not heard, and go to your room when you've made a mistake. Or there's often punishments for showing our true innate nature. So we disconnect from that feminine. The other time that it comes through, and this has been more my experience in the last couple of years, has come through it comes through a really bad illness, some kind of loss of either self or, grief. Sometimes we lose parents or friends or whatever. It comes through those really big emotional upheavals. Some women get it when they go into perimenopause and menopause and start getting those sorts of symptoms. And what it really is this idea that we've gone along with the rules of this masculine world, and we've gained the success, and we've kind of made it, in inverted commas. We've done what we're supposed to do, and we look at the world and we're like, something doesn't feel right here. We feel like we've betrayed the truth of who we are. We feel like we've betrayed our values, even if we can't consciously work it out. We know that there is something we have not done or we are not doing that is actually a deeper truth for ourselves. And we go into that sort of crisis. And so we end up with this, illusory boon of success. So we think we've kind of made it. And then we're like, but I've betrayed myself to get here, or I'm not living my truth to get here, or something feels really incongruent. It could be that, once we've gotten to that stage, we just feel stuck. And we're like, is this all there is to life? And so then it's that journey of Inanna or Demeter to go and find Persephone, whereby we have to go to that wasteland. And we cannot go to our inner world with all of our worldly possessions. We need to strip ourselves bare and get vulnerable. And I can tell you now, the heroine's journey for me in the last 2 years has had me screaming for God to take me home on no less than 4 occasions. I have literally wanted to check out of this world. It has been deep. It has been very painful. Sorry, I nearly let a swear word out then. That was my spiritual sailor almost coming out. Like, it has been heart-wrenching, but that's part of it. It is the dark night of the soul on steroids. Now, the beauty of it was that because I'd done so much other work in healing, I moved out of those literally on my knees screaming type moments much faster than I would have in the past. I saw the light. I was able to reach out to the healers that I knew could support me through it, or it was easier to navigate. But we do need that help when we're navigating it because we can't do it on our own. And what happens when we start to go into that inner world is not the slaying of the dragons and ogres that we come across on our path to getting the Holy Grail. It's not the external stuff. We're slaying our inner demons, our inner dragons, our inner ogres. And we are having to truly get to understand ourselves light and dark. We have to see the dark within ourselves and shine a light on it and go, okay, how have you kept me safe? How have you benefited me? How have you helped me on my journey? How have you helped me to love myself more? And then we start to come out into the world, and there's this part of us that yearns for the way things were because it is in so many ways simpler. Let me just strive for success and do all the things and tick all the boxes, because in some ways that's easier, but we look and we go, I can't go back. And so there's this bit of yearning for, I just want to be that, young, naive woman I was in my early 20s. And you're like, yeah, no, that's never happening again. But then what happens is we're drawn to heal that masculine part of ourselves because that's been damaged in the journey as well. And we start to recognize his strengths and the magic of the logic and control that he brings in when it's tempered and not wounded. When he can be the riverbed that holds the feminine, or the container that holds the feminine with such strength that the feminine has a chance to fully express herself. That's what we start bringing in, and it becomes that union of masculine and feminine that we can bring out into the world. And so that's really the difference of that heroine's journey. Yes, there is a big drive for community, and that's where you see women's circles becoming so much more popular, where you see communities of women or women's networking groups on a business level becoming more and more seen and popular because women are starting to realize that they need that community of other women. And that's part of that heroine's journey as well, as we move into that Marga phase. We're living 20, 30 years longer than we were however long ago. So when we used to have maiden, mother, crone, that kind of fit. But realistically, from the time we sort of hit perimenopause or menopause, we're moving into crone. Doesn't kind of work. The crone really, I feel, is where the community comes to you to gain knowledge. But at 45, 50, we're not ready for everyone to come to us. We've still got heaps of energy, but we're no longer in that mother phase. We're no longer in that. And so there's this fourth phase of womanhood that's also coming out, which we're calling Marga, which is this community mother aspect. So instead of mothering your own children, instead of mothering your own flock, instead of mothering your own business, it's like you're taking that wisdom further afield, but you're going out rather than having people come back. And so I find that often this heroine's journey fits really beautifully with that transition almost from mother to Marga. as we're going through that, or as we're going through other big life transitions as well. But that's where I'm seeing it with a lot of my clients at the moment, is in that kind of transition phase. And that's what I love about the heroine's journey, plus this newish phase of womanhood that we're all learning to explore and learning how to bring out into the world.
Mm.
That was a really long answer, sorry.
Oh, that was beautiful. I got chills actually when you mentioned Demeter reaching out for Persephone. And to me, what you're describing feels a lot like remothering and refathering yourself, and then claiming the goddesses and the gods and everything in between in your inner realm.
Yeah.
And that is a very cyclical journey. In my view, there are moments where you can do it yourself, but then there are moments where you need like reflections of people who are around the same stage as you. And then there are moments you need the crone energy. And then there are moments you need the child energy. You need to get back to the child, to the baby within you and around you, to get to that joy, to reclaim that joy. So, and you explained it so beautifully. And I think, to me, the difference from heroes to heroines is like the hero is trying to get somewhere. Heroine is like, who am I? What the hell am I doing here? Let me just find myself first. Let me just find all the elements of myself. And the goddess energy in particular has so many layers that our society doesn't let us explore. There's the fierceness, there's the death mother, there's Kali, there's like there can be a lot of fiery, even destructive energies there that we need to unpack and look at and absorb and embody in different in healthier ways.
And let's face it, with the fiery mother, with the destructive mother, with that fierceness that you talk about, is it any wonder that we have that in us when she's been locked up in a cage, basically since the time we were born? We've locked our divine feminine in a cage. Now, if you were locked in a cage for, what was I when I started to get her out, 36, 9-10 years ago, I started to finally get her out. Is there any wonder she's really peeved? Like, there's gonna be that energy if you've been tied up or chained down. And think of all of the fairy tales where there is that, the wicked witches and the witches burning the children or putting them in the ovens, or there's a reason for that. Because she has been so denied and suppressed. Of course there's anger there. Who wants a playful child around when you've been told that you don't deserve to even live in this realm? And so that wildness, that fierceness within women, once we've brought it out and allowed it to have its raw and to have its destructive nature, because we have to have a safe place to let that out. Once it's tempered, it becomes one of our biggest strengths. One of the biggest problems a lot of my clients have is accessing their anger. I love anger. I love it. Now, I don't spew it over people like I used to. I don't vomit over people. I don't, project it over others the way that I used to. Of course, I do occasionally because I'm human and I can be unresourceful at times too. But for the most part, anger is my best tool because it shows when my boundaries have been violated. It shows when I'm afraid. It shows when I'm feeling unloved or disrespected or like I don't matter. It shows when I'm hurt, because anger can be that mobilizing force. And, I love the different shades of anger. If you think of wrath, it is the best emotion. Wrath is what got women the vote. That justified anger of going, I don't want to be a second-class citizen anymore. I am going to get the vote. Those women were powered by wrath. Any social movement that is successful is powered by wrath. It is that justified anger. And you know what? I can have wrath for all of those people who abused me, as well as compassion and love that they did the best they could. I don't need to forgive wrath. I can hold it really comfortably because it's justified anger. And when I hold that beautifully in my body, it means that I don't put up with that behavior anymore. I've got those boundaries in place. And actually, even better than the boundary, which is what I'm imposing on other people, I have a standard of how I expect to be treated in this world. And that behavior doesn't come close to where I'm at. And so there's these beautiful nuances that we can get to within healing once women start to access that divine feminine and allow some of that anger to be out. Because what is the worst thing you can be is an angry woman? And what's even worse than an angry woman is an angry woman of color. And it's like, you know, once we start accessing our anger and using it with that beautiful feminine power and feminine energy, and as we reclaim that, it changes everything, because it's not about us putting boundaries and enforcing them on others. It's about us raising our standards of how we will be treated. And that's magic.
Is that part of what you mean when you say self-mastery? Because I know you talk about self-mastery as this overarching umbrella of your healing work.
Yeah. It's understanding everything that makes you up to be who you are. It's understanding that bodily physiology. I've basically created 7 pillars amongst the work that I've done. And if we don't understand this physical body that we're navigating the world in, if we don't understand our emotional self, if we don't understand our mindset stuff, and if we don't understand this connection to something greater, if we're ignoring one of those parts, we may as well be ignoring most of it. Because we can't fix, not that it's fixing, we can't become whole until we are working on all of those different aspects and integrating them all, recognizing that we are more than just this physical meat suit that we're walking around in. And the more we can have grace and compassion for ourselves, the more that we can deeply love ourselves. And that doesn't mean, I saw this really annoying ad on TV the other day. We were watching the Rugby World Cup final because my partner's a Kiwi. And there was a men's deodorant ad that was talking about it being self-care. And I got so angry because I'm like, if you think that frickin' deodorant is self-care, holy crap, that is just marketing BS at the highest order. You know, self-care, by the way, deodorant's not self-care. That's just, you know, human cleanliness. Like, seriously. Anyway, but I saw that kind of stuff and I thought, well, this is why the world is so screwed. If deodorant can be self-care, then, you know, we're setting the bar pretty damn low. What it is, it's really understanding our internal landscape. It's understanding what shaped us. It's understanding the way that we navigate the world. It's understanding that all of our unresourceful behaviors have come from a place of us trying to keep ourselves safe and trying to keep ourselves alive to the next day. That's it. And as soon as we start to understand that, we understand that our inner children need to be reparented, that they're just doing the best they can with what they've got, then all of a sudden our world starts to open up. And that's what I mean about self-mastery. It doesn't mean that I never have unresourceful moments. It doesn't mean that I don't lose my temper. It doesn't mean that, you know, I'm holier than thou and enlightened and sitting on a mountaintop in, you know, in meditation half the day. What it means is I accept and acknowledge my unresourceful behaviors. I know they're always going to be there in some form or another. But what can I do with them? Can I notice them when they are arisen? Can I recognize them? And what do I do about that to repair the relationships where those unresourceful behaviors have happened? Obviously, the most it happens with is my partner and my children, because, you know, and his children, because we all live in the same house, and that tends to be where we are our least resourceful. And so again, it's looking at those behaviors when they do happen, and what do I do about it? How do I repair that relationship having acted unresourcefully? How do I make amends? How do I apologize in a heartfelt way that actually makes change? That's the key for me in self-mastery. And the more deeply we understand ourselves on lots of different levels, the better that is.
So basically what I'm hearing you say is divine, messy, human, just like the title of your book. So do you feel like divine plus messy equals human? Is that what
Yeah.
the formula is.
The way I look at it is the more that we understand we are divine creatures, that we are connected to the divine, that we have the divine within us, the more we can accept that divinity, because sometimes our light is harder to accept than our shadows, because let's face it, we get told our shadows all the time. But the more we can accept and tap into that divinity, the more that we can own that divinity in us, the more we can understand we are always going to be messy as hell, because we're here in this world of contrast. We will always have light and dark. We will always have good and bad. We will always have, war and peace. We will always have this contrasting behavior. And we will not always act resourcefully because we have so many things that have happened to us, things that we've seen, things that we've been conditioned for. And the more we can accept and love our divinity, the more that we can accept and love our messiness, the easier our human journey becomes. It takes the pressure off needing to be perfect, needing to please everybody around us. I talk about overwhelm and burnout. Do you know what? They are not our problems. Overwhelm and burnout is a symptom. What's the cause? The cause is us striving to be something we're not. The cause is us overworking ourselves to prove to everybody that we are enough, but we were born enough. And as soon as we start to recognize all of this, those behaviors go away. Those symptoms go away. I haven't been in burnout for years. I get into overwhelm, of course, because, I still want to do things in this world. But that whole burnout aspect, actually, no, I get to stress because I don't get overwhelmed anymore, because I don't get to that point where I actually can't function, which is what overwhelm is. And so again, those things that people talk about all the time, they don't happen as much because I'm catching it sooner, because I do have that deep self-love. I have those boundaries in place. I have those standards in place. And that comes from understanding the messiness of who and what we are. When I fall into people pleasing, which happens because as healers, often we have the rescuer in us quite deeply. And we have the wounding, the wounded healer is often there as well, let's face it. If you start recognizing those, you pick them up sooner. It's like that child who's got a little tear in the corner of his eye rather than having a full tantrum. We just pick it up sooner. We recognize it sooner. And that's that self-mastery aspect. How quickly can I interrupt these old patterns that used to drive me to burnout, illness, self-destruction?
I came across something you shared that stood out to me. You said, I think it was on Instagram, you said, the work we're avoiding is often the work that will change our lives.
Yeah.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, it is. It so is. It's really interesting. I have to say, these days, I'm quite prepared for the sledgehammers that come, because I go, you know what, I can face that because I've faced all this stuff before. So I don't tend to avoid the work anymore, but I know my biggest shifts have come when I've wanted to avoid something and I've not wanted to look at it. And I have avoided it and avoided it and avoided it and gone, no, that doesn't exist. Denial, denial. But when I've had the courage to look at it, the changes that has made to my life have been beyond what I could ever imagine. And that's why these days I don't shy away from it. I'm like, okay, hit me with it. I'm prepared to go there. One of the big, and I'll tell this really quick story. Everyone knows it, but I'm going to tell it in a slightly different way. Because part of my story over the last 2 years that I've been navigating as the heroine's journey doesn't necessarily fit into the models of the heroine's journey, but I like to mention it because people are so familiar with the story of Jesus and the cross. Jesus carried the cross of his own destruction. Now, People will argue he'd been forced to, but let's just forget all of that bit. Let's go to the full, pure archetypal nature of it. We all carry the cross of our own destruction, whatever that may be. Now, somebody else may nail us to that cross, but we have to kind of choose to get down from it. And we often need help to get down because obviously we need to be unhooked somehow. And then it's that go into the cave, have that little bit, the belly of the whale in the hero's journey, that time to reflect and, and then you rebirth into that next phase, resurrect yourself. That's very much the hero's journey, really. He's carrying his cross, he gets nailed to it, obviously, dies to who he was before to be reborn as something again. And we go through that just in a slightly different way in the heroine's journey. But the part in that story that doesn't get told is of two women who stood at the foot of the cross, Mary Magdalene, who was his lover, and Mother Mary, who was obviously his mother. And their job was not to climb that cross and rip the nails out and pull him down and tend to him, which is what we do as rescuers when we're in the shadow. We are climbing the crosses of the people that we love, pulling their nails out, trying to fix them. But realistically, they're going to keep getting nailed to that cross because they're still carrying it. Our job is to stand there. Now, do you think it was easy for somebody to watch their lover or their son suffer on that cross? To be spat on, to be tortured, to be ridiculed, to have the crown of thorns shoved on his head, to be bleeding and pleading for God to end it. Why hast thou forsaken me? When we are in our divine feminine, we are able to stand in our power and hold space for those around us, understanding that they are on their journey. I've had to do it with both of my children, and they're not that old. They're about to be 16 and 18. Over the last 2 years, I've had to be doing that for them. And I've also had to do it for my partner and his children. Now, as a natural rescuer, there are times I want to scale that cross and pull those nails out and give them all the tools and fix it. But I've had to go to my own healers and go, look, this is going on and I just need to stay in my own divinity. So how do we get me into that place? And I've had to stand and watch them as they're nailing themselves to their cross or being nailed to it as they're hanging there. And so this is also part of that heroine's journey, especially for us as healers who resonate with that healer energy, with that divine feminine energy, with that rescuer energy. It's a really important place for us to go, and it is one of the biggest sources of our growth, one of the hardest places to stand. And you do need support when you're standing there. But I tell you, it's been the biggest awakening for me over the last couple of years, was to be able to stand in that place and stand there relatively comfortable.
Mm. The way this is finding voice in me is I see this happening in me, in some of my clients, and especially healers this way. There's this tendency to let me do it myself. Like I've been doing it for all these years, let me do it myself. But what I see happening, which is why like I have this podcast and I'm not shy about saying like, see me, but then go see other healers. And then as a healer, get help, because there's a place that's even before the avoidance. Avoidance implies that there's awareness. There are places that we're avoiding that we're not even aware of.
No, absolutely. 100%.
And that's the place where you absolutely need to partner with a healer, the way you described beautifully, who will not fix it for you, but who will sit there or stand there with you, hold your hand and say, like, you got this. You got this. Like, let's look at, like, maybe you're not ready to see it in full, but let's open a tiny little window to it, a tiny little door. And then next time we'll open a little bigger door, which is also comes back to what we were discussing about the healing takes as long as it takes.
Yeah.
There is no fixed timeline of it, because you, me, or even the client is not in charge of it. There are invisible forces, your soul and
Yeah.
your soul commitments that are in charge of it. So it needs to be a very tender, compassionate process, that relationship between the person coming in for a healing and the healer, as well as your relationship with yourself as you're going through this self-healing and healing journey.
100%.
I want to know what you're learning right now. What are the messy or the divine bits, and what's next for you?
To be honest, I'm probably more in that divine space at the moment than the messy, but I only really came out of about 2 years of this messy heroine's journeys, because I was doing it in multiple ways at a time. I think I was on about 5 or 6 heroine's journeys simultaneously in different parts of my life. So it's been a hell of a ride, like a hell of a ride. And I probably only really came out of it maybe June, July time, probably July, let's face it. And so it's really, this last few months has really been about solidifying and anchoring in the wisdom that I've learned. So I went through the journeys, and then I discovered the heroine's journey about, I'd been looking at it for a while, but it really started to actually filter through my subconscious about April, May time. And then I was like, oh, that makes sense. Right, that's what I've been doing here, 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 here. So realistically, these last number of months have really been about marrying the knowledge and the wisdom together. That learned stuff with the lived experience. And anchoring that then obviously into my work and bringing that out. So it has, percentage wise, there was a hell of a lot more messy. And so I'm actually really enjoying this less messy part because, I think I've earned my stripes.
Them, right?
Yeah.
You get them, just enjoy.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And I'm really excited because I am writing, as I said, the self-mastery certification, which would be great for coaches and healers to really round out their practices. People who say do NLP, which is obviously very mind-based and dips a little bit into emotions, to really anchor into that awareness of the body, the energy systems, the spirit, that kind of thing. For people who are really emotional healers, to bring those other aspects in, even for PTs who work very much with the body, to understand some of the other stuff that feeds into that physical. So looking at writing all of that together, and I'm doing a lot of free webinars at the moment. I am doing group coaching stuff as well as my individual one-on-one work. So it's really this time of that rebirth. Like, it feels really good at the moment because in Australia we're in spring. So obviously these are all the seeds that I'm planting at the moment and watering and tending and creating. So it really is that start of the new cycle for me. So yeah, it's kind of exciting. And a welcome relief after the last 2 years.
We'll take it when we can get it.
I'll have it.
How can people find out more about your amazing work, Amanda? And I know you have a free gift too. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so on my website, I have the 7 Pillars of Self-Mastery. It is a Zoom recording that I did a few months back when I first launched myself as a self-mastery facilitator. I will be running live versions of those as well. So just if people sign up to my newsletter, then they'll get the information. I tend not to send them out too often. According to marketing people, that's not a good idea. But anyway, I think I went, oh, I'll send one out yesterday, and I did, and it had been about a month, so oops daisy, but that's all right. I'm also on all the socials, Amanda Kate Self Mastery. So yeah, come and check me out. Come give me a follow. Sign up to my newsletter if you want some more stuff, or there's the freebie on my website. So yeah, it'd be cool to connect with some people, and like I'm here to be of service. So whatever that means for everybody, whether it be my free stuff or whether it be other stuff, then that's all I can ask for.
Yeah. And you do offer one-on-one sessions as well, right?
Yes, yep. A predominance of my work is one on one. I've only recently moved into groups because I do work in such a trauma informed way. And I've worked with a lot of clients where they've been in group settings and I've had to help them manage their containers because all of these things have been opened up that weren't closed down properly. So I'd been really nervous about starting groups, but I've just started doing them and I absolutely love them. So yeah, so look, I'm loving this new version of my business, and I'm just seeing where it goes. There's a lot of curiosity. So yeah, and I've just been accepted to speak at TEDx in Mornington here in Australia. So that's also coming up next year. So that once it's available about April time, that'll be on my website and on my YouTube channel. So yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much,
Um,
Amanda. I love chatting with you. I feel like there was so many juicy stuff in this conversation that people are going to want to just lean into as they listen. So thank you so much.
my absolute pleasure. And thank you so much for bringing your light and your healing to the world because we really, really need it. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to Conversations with Healers. If this episode spoke to you in any way, please leave a review or comment, like or love it, and share it with others in your life. This is a true soul love project from my heart to yours. I really appreciate your help in spreading the word. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and check out other episodes to listen to some extraordinary healing stories and advice. Have a beautiful and wonderful day.